This segment of DC, a Jazz City, is brought to you by the DC Jazz Festival. This segment features jazz radio host Miyuki Williams as well as Jerry The Bama Washington's daughter, recounting the life and legacy of Jerry The Bama Washington.
You know, it's a funny thing about him. He is at WPFW for many years. I've listened to my dear friend Miyuki Williams talk about him with such love and his influence on her and how it was he who commandeered her into doing her own radio program. And so he was a real character on the radio, and unfortunately, there's not as much room or license for real characters on the radio anymore like there used to be.
Well, Jerry Washington did something incredible. He created a whole persona. Now here's a guy who was an Air Force veteran, and then I'm listening to him on PFW on Saturday afternoons, and he starts telling stories about Denise, his girlfriend. I said, wait a second now. I listened to these stories, and in fact, I was at a fundraiser for PFW at a place called the Panorama Room, and Jerry introduced me to this beautiful black woman. He said, well, this is Denise. And so I'm still, perplexed in a way. Well, that's not my business, Well, it was a fictional relationship. He had a real person that his name he used and would tell stories about feuds or fights they had. He never separated from his devoted wife, and he was devastated when his wife passed away. I mean, it really affected him seriously. But he'd tell these other stories, and it was just about the barber shop, where it was about the black community of D.C. And some of it was just fictional in a way, and other parts of it were touching upon the reality of being black in Washington.
When I first came to D.C., I listened to WPFW regularly, and I would hear this guy on Saturday. On Saturday, he played the blues, and on Sunday, he played jazz. And I would be like, who is this guy? And why is he so popular? But then, as I kept listening, he had a real kind of folk artistry about his radio programming that really reached a lot of people. And a lot of people in so-called high places, like Colin Powell, for example, were regular listeners to Jerry The Bama Washington's program. So I look at him as being one of the pillars of WPFW's now 45-year existence.
Jerry's on Saturday, I'm on Sundays. And for a long time, PFW wasn't counter-programming to me. We were part of the same community, but somebody said, hey, we gotta do something. So they put Jerry Washington, they put the heavy-duty guy on opposite me. So, and sometimes if I'm being preempted, I'd be listen to the other side of the Bama. And Jerry had a habit of taking records out of his collection that real serious programmers wouldn't dare play because of the surface noise and the scratch on it. He said, well, just imagine that's the sound of the fireplace in the background or whatever. And so with that, and I heard him, say, wow, if you don't like what I'm playing, go put Hassan on, switch your channel, you got choices, So whenever I played a scratchy record, I said, well, this is from the Jerry Washington collection of classic jazz. We had a real friendly rivalry on Sunday afternoons with the other side of the Bama on opposite me.
He lived in a building at 14th and Luzon, and his neighbor was Ron Sutton. And Ron Sutton was a DJ who had shows both on WHUR and WPFW. He Wash and Ron Sutton became friends, and Ron Sutton realized the wealth and depth of the music that Wash knew. So he started bringing him to the studios at WPFW, a community radio station, and just had him sit in with him. And having sit in with him, he thought that Wash really could, do what he was doing. So Ron Sutton apparently decided on one day, he told Wash to meet him at the station. He called in just before his time to go on and said he couldn't make it because he was sick, putting Wash in the position of having to go on by himself. And from that it was the end, because Lauren said she got such a huge response from Wash being in that Saturday slot. It was incredible and historic. And so Wash took that space from that point on. The Bama Hour was what he chose to call his show. He embraced the fact that Bama had a negative connotation, short for Alabama, meaning countrified or ignorant or something like that, and to acknowledge the fact that he was anything but this. He was this guy from the South playing the blues, and he embraced the word Bama, taking power away from the word and giving it a different kind of power and meaning. And so he made himself the Bama, and he's anything but. I remember very clearly, I was driving on Minnesota Avenue Southeast, and he was coming out of a record where he went, meow, play the record, started it wrong, and in the middle of it, he didn't like it or something, so he stopped playing it. And then apparently someone called and complained about his engineering or what he had just done. And he said something like, I don't tell you what shovel to use on your job, you don't tell me what to do on my job. And he said, you think you could do this better than me, maybe you should have your own show. If you want to do a show like this, then you call me up and I'll get you a show. So I remember I was going to Melvin Deal's dance class, and there was a phone booth on the right there when you entered. And I remember putting the quarter in. I don't remember I got the number. I must have already known it or something. And I called. I said, Mr. Washington, are you sincere about you being willing to teach someone how to do what you're doing? And he said, sure. He said, come on Sunday and I'll teach you. And I never had any aspirations about being a DJ, doing music or anything like that, but just something about that moment, I don't know where I got the nerve to do it, but I called him and I followed up. And the following Sunday I came to WPFW, which is at 7th and 8th Street at the time, and Wash had with him Lucille, his daughter, as well as a woman named Yvonne helping him, because he had so many things going on while he was playing the music. He got an abundance of phone calls, which they would, help filter for him or get his albums in order, or even, Lucille would even play things for him. And for me and Wash, it became love at first sight, because he was military, and I yes sir and no sir'd him to death. And he was married to a Japanese woman, like my father was married to a Japanese woman. And he had a daughter, Lucille, who I met that moment, and we were the same. We were both round, and had the same kind of hair. And so, we connected like that. And then Lucille was, much younger than me, but it would just automatically felt like a real sisterhood. We really connected. And then Wash was just so generous with me. And again, yes sir and no sir, the death I think was what really, yes sir, because he knew I was military too.
I primarily grew up in the DC area. I was born in Alaska on the Air Force Base. But my father was stationed shortly afterwards at Bowling Air Force Base in Southeast Washington, and that's where he retired. I have pictures of various jazz albums on the floor and me trying to take a step. He listened to a lot of different artists. I think that it was more the memory that was invoked by the music as opposed to a particular artist.
The thing about Wash is that he really loved the music. I mean, that's why Ron Sutton and him connected. He had a deep knowledge. He was a singer, and he performed. And he had this wealth of knowledge of the music itself, and he loved it. And Wash is able to connect with people because he connects with the music, whether it's a memory that happened before or something that he's going to make in that moment. One of my greatest pleasures is when I was training with him, he mentored me. When he was training me, I would just sit in the studio and he would tell me what to play, or he would tell Lucille and I what to play. And he would just lay back and he would just really listen and enjoy the music. That's a picture I see when I play certain songs, or we play Johnny Hartman or John Coltrane, or we play Charles McPherson, or we play Bobby Boubland or B.B. King. They're just moments he would just sit behind the mic with his eyes closed, just listening to the music, and you can see him reliving a memory or creating a new one or getting ready to come up with some narrative that will connect that song to some story that he's going to share with the audience.
Bobby Bland and B.B. King were very close to him. When he passed away, they both called me because they were both touched by his death. But I remember one time at Constitution Hall, B.B. King and Bobby Bland were doing a show there, and I was backstage, and they actually got Bobby Bland's bodyguard to kind of be my babysitter. He would kind of sit there with me while all the performers would go out, and then he would be the MC and he would tell jokes, but when it was time for Mr. Bland to go out, the bodyguard told me to sit right here and do not move. And then he went on to take care of business. And we also, it was amazing meeting B.B. King. Lee Atwater actually closed the restaurant, the Red Hot and Blue, down in Virginia, and all of B.B. King's band and all of and my father and I, we went and had lunch there. It was a full room full of people and a whole table full of unlimited food. It was so funny. And B.B. King came up to me. He said, "Oh, I knew you were a nice person." And I was like, "Really?" And he said, "Yes, because your name is Lucille, like my guitar." It was amazing.
Sonny Stitt. He loved Sonny Stitt. He would call him on the air Katia's daddy, and that was when Katia was just a little thing, or young thing. She still is. He loved Bud Powell, Charles McPherson, Ben Webster. Everybody. And he loved the vocalists as well. Charlie Parker, he loved Charlie, loved Ray Charles, both for the other side as well as the Bama. He started off doing the blues because he took over Bill Harris's show. I don't recall exactly how he got the other show, but even though he did the blues show, he loved the jazz show. I mean, the blues was like work. The jazz was like sublime breathing, listening, whatever. He loved doing the jazz show. And also, he liked showing two different sides of himself, because he was that and he was that. You know, as so many of us are. We're not just, one thing. He's just not the Bama. And then it was such a great title to have the other side, so that you show the complexity and the depth of a person. And he's not just the blues, even though he knew the blues, stone cold. He also knew this other stuff too. And he could play it, whether it's a vocalist or an instrumentalist. And he did this thing, mostly on the jazz, more so than he did on the blues. He would play one song. And one time, Bill Wax told me it was 14 or 15, I don't recall. He played My Funny Valentine 14 different times for 14 different instrumentals or vocalists. But the intent wasn't just to drive anyone crazy with My Funny Valentine or Body and Soul, whichever song he was choosing to do. It was to show people the nuances or the intricacies or the differences of the brilliance of the different artists. Yeah, they sang the same melody, they sang the same words, but listen to so-and-so do this, and listen to this horn do this, or listen to this vocalist. And then that way he was teaching us, because he was cognizant of that as well. If he wasn't trying to tell us a story, he was trying to teach. And Bill Wax, who went on to XM radio, he said he would do some of that on XM, and he called it the wash cycles. So I thought that was because he was blues, but I thought that was witty, that he adopted that, and he does that. So. But Wash was the first person, again, I've never heard anyone else on any other radio station do that to that level, to that extent. I mean, 14, 15, renditions of the same song. But it was a learning. It was like going to one of Rusty Hassan's class or something. Well, let's see, this is a classic piece. Let's listen to this and let's see how these different artists attack it. He had an amazing appeal. His appeal was broad and wide. He was amazing because the everyday person that he would deal with or interact at the liquor store or at the barbershop or at the post office or at the United Planning Organization where he worked, he would bring all those elements into his radio show. And people from those worlds, as well as people from the political world, because he would talk about politics, he would talk about social issues, he would talk about cultural things. He would pull all that stuff in, and everyone could connect to him. Whether it was Lee Atwater, he was a Rabbit fan, and I'm not exaggerating. He was a Rabbit fan. He had a restaurant in Virginia called Red Hot and Blue, and Wash would have carte blanche there. He could go there anytime he wanted with however big group and stay there as long as he wanted. And Marion Barry would also be a huge fan. He would come here, he would talk while Lucille and I would do the albums and everything else. They would come with checks, they would come with cash. There's a whole range of people who would do that and do that consistently. And again, every day. And he was very natural and very open. He would tell, he's the first person who ever heard say, we're at 7th and H, if the area, come on by. We'd be happy to see you. And he meant it. Every phone call, I mean, to this day, even though it's hard in the studio because we have to do the engineering, we have to speak, we have to do everything, I still answer every phone call that comes in if I can get it, if I'm not doing something else, because that's how he taught me. He answered every phone call. Of course, when he answered every phone call, I was doing the engineering and everything else, so it was easier on him, but he took every call and he spoke to every person. And he was honest with everyone, whether it was a good comment or a negative one. And I mean, one of the funniest ones, like I said, was one when he said, I don't tell you which shovel to use for your job, don't tell me how to do mine. It took me the longest time to figure out. I said, why does he assume that person uses a shovel and digs? I said, oh, he's insulting him while he's saying, mind your own business. I said, I get it. But he was very, very quick. And everyone, or many people, could connect to that. They could connect to his sincerity, to his heartbreak, to his joy, and to his love of the music. We could all connect to that. And he was funny. He was so funny. I mean, I can't deliver it like he did, just like, that. But when I heard him say that, I don't pick your shovel, it was funny. I mean, the way he does it is his delivery is extremely funny.
My dad was so real. I mean, he had no cut cards. He was a teacher. He taught me so much. He said, you're so book smart, but you don't have any street smarts. And he wanted to give me that, but it was so hard for me, where it was so natural for him. He used to tell me, you graduated high school when you were 15. He was like, so did I. He was like, but yet and still I had the book smart and the street smart. He told me how no one paid for his tuition when he was in college. He thought grandmother was sending him money. Grandfather thought grandmother was sending him money. Grandmother thought grandfather was sending him money. He would take his summers off. He would pick cotton that entire summer. He would take that money. He would go to the pool hall. He would flip it at the pool hall, gambling, and that's how he paid his tuition. He said the last year he was at Morehouse, there was a pool hustler there that he didn't know, and he hustled him, and he was not able to pay for his last year in college. So that's when he joined the services.
Well, in the military, the stories that I recall are stories when he talked about he would go hear different people in the clubs, when he was in Camp Zama or different places in different parts of the world. I think not just the military, though, just like he incorporated the parts of the community, parts of his home. He talked about dog. He talked about his daughter. He made me his daughter. He just was, again, made this mosaic from bits of truth to bits of fantasy to feed us, to just give us a great Saturday morning or Sunday afternoon. He was just so colorful. He was so creative. One of the stories that the Washington Post and New York Times carries, they dubbed him the Garrison Keilor of similar to, so, Garrison Keilor would make up these places about this place, Prairie Home, this fictitious place. Wash would do something similar, but he would use elements of his real life filled with elements of, just things that were in the community, filled with this narrative that he would make up. And people just loved it. And then he would connect it again to the music, She done left me again. And then you play, something, play something, that'll break your heart. Or, someone made him happy, you play something, a song that, make us all tap our foot. But again, all of this stuff, his brilliance, his imagination, his storytelling, but it was always connected to the music. He was amazing. And again, we don't have Arbitrons or Nielsen ratings or anything. Our feedback in terms of who's listening and who wants to connect is the fund drive, where the dollars are invested by the community to whatever they want to support. So not only did he have a product that people really, really liked and accepted, he could talk people into doing it. A lot of people have a great product. A lot of people really, really do. But he was brilliant that he could leverage his product and convince people or get people to do things like donate funds. He had a 3-hour show, and I was there when we raised, and I say we, but I was just answering the phone, over $10,000. And that's a lot of money in public broadcast dollars, especially because back in that time, our basic membership was only $30, and there were no credit card usage. So it was people calling in, promising sending $30. The outliers would be the Jack Kent Cookes, Marion Barrys, the Colin Powells, who would give $1,000 to come in with the $1,000 checks or with cash money. But lots of people gave a little bit of money, and then there were other people who gave a lot of money. And he, again, the product is undeniable. Everyone loved Wash in his shows. But again, he's brilliant in how he was able to convey to people the need or why they should give that money. It's so interesting now, they have this whole thing now, they, what's it called, subscribers. Give WPFW, or one of the public radio stations or television stations, make us your smallest bill, give us that on a consistent basis. He was talking about that long before it became part of the regular script of everyone who does public fundraising. That's become very, very commonplace, and but he developed that back when there wasn't anyone telling anyone how to do that. He came out on his own. Make WPFW your smallest bill, promise us $5 a month. He just came up with that. He figured out different ways that people give money. So yeah, maybe you can do the $30 membership, maybe you can't, but if you can't, maybe you can do more than that. And that's how he got those large, if this is, and then the other thing he would do, if you really, really, really like my show, then you have to support it, because if you don't support it, I can't be here. And, it's not worth my time to come in here if you guys don't like it. And then that would make people panic. Oh my God, he's going to leave. And then the checks went. So he figured out different ways. There's different appeals that you can do. What I'm saying, he's brilliant in him designing whatever it was to, again, connect and to talk to the audience, to get them to give of their money. And then the other thing was, because of his notoriety and because it was the most popular show on the air, people love hearing their names saying, "Oh yeah, Sonny, she just made a donation," and then, "Oh yeah, Wilder's got great taste. He just gave me money," or no, Rusty, he must have hit jackpot the lottery because he just gave. He would again take it to another level to where those people would give and be happy to give again next time. Again, he was a salesperson. So he was a storyteller, he's a musical person, and then he's also a salesperson. And he developed, again, it was, when I say it's brilliant, no one else had thought about all the different things that he did in order to give people reasons why to donate and to support the station. Because he could communicate the need, the reasons why, and then people wanted to. It was through his fundraising, Saturdays and Sundays, that we got traction. And we went from one level to the next and expanded. In terms of, because there were all these articles on Wash. There was, all this water cooler talk was, what did he say this past weekend? He created this thing where he put sort of WPFW more on the map. We were here, we were Pacifica, but he took us to the next level. And so I think in part, and again, the fundraising was incredible. He was also, again, in terms of being connected to the community, he was friends with P.D. Green, and P.D. Green was huge at the time with the United Planning Organization. He worked there with him, but they were friends. And Wash would talk about them. Again, he would spin, when I say he was connected to this community, he would spin stories, whether it be about Denise, his girlfriend, while he was married to his wife, but people didn't know that that was just for the public consumption, but the private stuff, it had nothing to do with anything. P.D. Green and him are real friends, and he would interject him in a lot of the stories and everything. Same with Ron Sutton. Or Ron Sutton Jr. is Ron Sutton's son, who was a saxophonist. He would insert him. Or Ray Charles. Whatever. Again, he would take actual, real people and he would include them in his narrative, whatever that is. And that was part of, I think, the attraction to those people at the post office, because he would talk about the people at the post office. He said, "You guys who are working at Giant now, packing those boxes." He'd be very detailed about how we pull each individual in. There were times when I could go around the city and go to any post office and WPFW would be on the airways at the post office because everyone was waiting to see if they're going to talk about him or someone at another station or anything like that. He was really, and that came, I think, from his sincerity, but it really expanded the audience base because he would include everyone. He would talk about Jack Kent Cooke, who was also a big fan and one of those major donors, because when he talked about the Washington football team, he was amazing.
He had a relationship with Esther Phillips. Talk about that.
I remember one of her last performances was at Blues Alley, and she actually came and stayed with us. We had a 2-bedroom apartment, but she came and she slept on the couch. She became part of the family. She taught my mother how to make cornbread with crackling in it. It was amazing. But they were in the kitchen and they were working together. My mother didn't know very much English, but she showed her how to make that cornbread, and my mother was like, "Ooh, this is good." But and she would go and perform, and my father would sit around and talk to her, and then he would talk to me about life lessons. And how some things look good, how things that glittered weren't all gold, and how hard her life was. I mean, just being a performer and how it wasn't all glitter and glamour. But he touched a lot of lives. Esther Phillips, when she left, she went to California, and she passed away shortly after that. But because we couldn't even get her bags to her in California, she had left her belongings behind. And but when she left, she enjoyed the time in this 2-bedroom apartment with a person that didn't speak any English and my father. Just the times that we would sit around and we would talk about the music, talk about going at the different venues. I mean, they would sit around and laugh. I couldn't appreciate it then, but I mean, she had so much fun. When she left, I remember her hugging everybody the last night and telling everyone how much of a good time she had and to thank us for our hospitality.
Yeah, I try to do something every week in my mind. I say, this is for, because when I go to get my CDs and stuff, I think about him. There's a photo of him in my CD room and everything. And I try to keep, his passion, his integrity, his intent of, really trying to connect with the audience every time I do it. So sometimes it'll be one song, or sometimes there'll be a set of songs, or sometimes it'll be like if I play Dick Morgan, and I'm thinking about Wash, because that's a local artist who he loved, who he played, who he talked to, and I wouldn't have known about Dick Morgan if it wasn't for Wash. And so if I say, hey, Wash, here's some Dick, I try to, again, in some small way, pay tribute to him, but uphold, the standard of what he has set in terms of ability to hopefully connect with people or play something that will squeeze their heart or make their toe tap or make them smile.